Welcome everybody. This is our wonderful discussion about Spaces for All Humankind, facilitating diverse and inclusive aerospace events. Let me share my screen. All right. So thank you all for coming today. And we have an exciting lineup of speakers for you all today, as well as an open discussion afterwards. So the Aerospace and Diversity and Inclusion Task Force is an ad hoc group of students and young professionals working to improve diversity and inclusion in the aerospace industry. Included in this group are Brooke Owens Fellows, Matthew Osakowitz Fellows, AIAA Diversity Scholars and Diversity Working Group, Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS, and the Space Generation Advisory Council. So today, Amy and I are your hosts and moderators. I'm Caroline Zhuang, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a second-year PhD student at Columbia University's Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. I work on satellite and ground data for understanding how climate and humans affect wildfires. And I'm a 2017 Brooke Owens Fellow and part of the executive team now for the Brooke Owens Fellowship.
And hi, I'm Amy Nguyen, she, her, a rising senior at the University of California, Irvine, studying mechanical and aerospace engineering. I'm also a 2019 Brooke Owens Fellow and an AIAA Diversity Scholar and a 2020 Matthew Osakowitz Fellow. All of these programs I highly recommend you apply to if you're a student interested in the aerospace industry.
And so, now that we've done introductions, I just want to, first of all, thank the Ohio State University for providing us with the live cart captioning and ASL today. And we'll be posting instructions in the chat for making the most of these features. And we ask that during the presentations to please mute your microphone and turn off your video so the interpreter can be seen clearly. So Amy, would you be able to post in the chat?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, in terms of presentations, we will begin with 4 presentations on what impressive young professionals are doing to advance diversity, cultural inclusion, and accessible science. They'll share their tips that they have for other organizations, and then we'll follow up with questions and answers for the panel and a discussion with the broader audience.
The goal of this panel is to facilitate the community discussion about diversity and inclusion in the aerospace industry. We want to hear what you're doing and see what we need to do in the future. And our first panelist is Christian Jones, a Brooke Owens Fellow of the class of 2019. Her pronouns are she, her. She will present on ensuring that cultural inclusion is not just a part of the phrase diversity and inclusion, but is actually being executed. And please remember to mute your microphones and turn off your camera during the presentations for the ASL interpreter. Thank you.
All right, so I'll stop the share now. So Christian, please take it away.
Absolutely, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So thank you all so much for having me on this panel, talking about one of my favorite things, if not the most favorite thing about engineering is the diversity and inclusion of the aerospace industry. And today I'm going to be talking about specifically racial and ethnic diversity and inclusion in aerospace. So I'm going to start off with the diversity piece, as that's the leading phrase, the leading word, and that's a very important piece. So I kind of want to start this off by setting the scene. And wherever you are, I just want you to close your eyes and kind of imagine this kind of going on. So first and foremost, you're on vacation with friends, with family, and you're thinking about a really amazing dinner, like what possibly you could eat. And then you walk past a sign and it's a buffet and it's all you can eat. It's steak and lobster and all different varieties of food. And so you're excited. It's all you can eat. And matter of fact, it's $30 for steak and lobster. So you're excited, you get dressed, go to dinner, you walk in and you're ready to get your ticket. You get your ticket, you walk in and all you see is potatoes. It's a whole bunch of different potatoes, whether it be mashed potatoes, French fries, sweet potato fries, baked potato, but you don't see anything but potatoes. And I use this scenario because it really does emulate what it is when we talk about diversity and inclusion in the aerospace industry. It gets you all excited for all these different people and experiences that are brought in. And right now we're still in the phases of working on diversity. So why does this happen in the aerospace industry? And really, I think there's three main things that I can pick why this happens. First thing, diversity is so broad. There are so many different things that make people different. And if you don't necessarily commit to those individual things, sometimes you end up getting people that are similar more than different. And also, it's comfortable to be able to see people that look like you and represent you. So sometimes we don't necessarily get diverse backgrounds. How can we fix this in the aerospace industry? This is why we're all here. We want to make sure that students as well as young professionals are getting a broad range of different backgrounds on their teams, as well as on executive teams and within the industry as well. So the first thing is committing to efforts for racial and ethnic diversity within the aerospace industry. It's super important to commit to that wholeheartedly and not just say diversity as a whole. It's important to identify individual sectors of diversity. The second thing is to stop what I like to call the quota syndrome. And that is saying, okay, we only want this number of African-American students or African-American professionals. We want a certain number of Native American or Hispanic, and really just open it up to whoever's the most qualified, and really making sure that as an industry, we're reaching out to those diverse populations in the first place. And lastly, broadening our applicant pool. Again, that's very important to reach out to those diverse communities and racial and ethnic diverse communities to make sure that the applicant pool starts off diverse, so that when it comes down to selection, that we already have a diverse pool. So there's no need to really rationalize. It's just who's the most qualified. So let's put the inclusion and diversity and inclusion. A lot of times companies, especially as humans, we forget that. It's just, we want to look at diversity and forget the inclusion part. So I'm going to tell you a few tips on how to make sure that's being included. So the first thing is, how can we make the industry make sure that people, regardless of race or ethnicity, feel welcomed? And it's not just enough to diversify the industry. If folks from different backgrounds don't feel included and welcomed, it doesn't make much of a difference. So first, hosting events that honor the amazing histories of different races, whether it be, celebrating Black History Month or Asian Heritage Month, and really making sure that you don't necessarily just take those times to honor those races and those ethnicities and the great work that they bring to this industry, but taking it on an everyday basis if need be, to make sure that they're honored. The second thing is to create a culture of equity. It's so important with bringing especially underrepresented populations into the aerospace industry, that there's a sense of equity in making sure that all people are able to equitably advance and develop in this industry, and make sure that across the board, we are giving opportunities to all. And then lastly, support. Making sure that we are supporting disenfranchised races, especially when issues arise that negatively impact them. And as a woman of color, as an African-American woman in this climate, we all talk about Black Lives Matter and those things, but it was so important to me as an employee when my company released a statement saying simply Black Lives Matter. And that made me feel so validated in this industry and with this company. And so that was just one example of how you can really feel supported by an organization or by an industry. So to conclude, I just want you all to remember that we want an industry that keeps the promises of diversity and variety and not just a buffet with strictly potatoes. I also want you all to remember that diversity means nothing if those that are perceived different do not feel included in this industry. And I just want you all to make sure that you just don't forget the inclusion part of this. So I want to end with a quote. And it's diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. And I just expect that all of us work hard to ask each other to dance. And I thank you all so, so much.
Christian, that was wonderful. And thank you so much for setting the tone of this discussion. I want to just acknowledge how many participants are on this chat right now. There are 80 people, and that's amazing that, you know, together as an aerospace industry and an aerospace community, that we're all able to come together and talk about these issues of diversity and inclusion and talk about it on the same, like we're all on the same team. And given that, I'd like to continue on to our next presenter. Let me just share my screen again. We have a wonderful team of presenters, Anna Volker and Michaela Deming. They're both part of the Ohio State University Department of Astronomy. Anna is the coordinator of outreach, and their pronouns are they, them, and Michaela is an astronomy outreach intern, and her pronouns are she, her. They will present on the latest developments of the exciting world of accessible astronomy outreach. Notably, they'll highlight the ongoing work of SciAccess, an international initiative dedicated to promoting disability inclusion in STEM, which just happened a month ago. So please, Anna and Michaela, take it away.
Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here. And thank you, Christian, for that wonderful talk. I had never heard that quote, and I adore it. I think that's such a wonderful, wonderful way to phrase that. So I am going to go ahead and get started here. As Caroline mentioned, I'm the coordinator of outreach for Ohio State's Department of Astronomy, and I also work with CCAP, which stands for the Center for Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics. And today I'm joined by my student, Michaela.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Deming, and I am a rising fifth year at The Ohio State University studying astronomy and astrophysics. I've been working with Anna on space science outreach since the beginning of May, and I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're today speaking specifically about disability inclusion and accessibility within space science and the STEM fields. One primary way that I got involved in this is actually through something called tactile astronomy or tactile space science. And this is an approach where we use the sense of touch to make science more accessible for blind and vision impaired users. I began this work at the Space Telescope Science Institute with Dr. Carol Christian, where we use data from the Hubble Space Telescope, such as the Whirlpool galaxy seen here, and we convert this into tactile models for people to learn about through the sense of touch. So this model was created and is being held here in the hands of a student at the Maryland School for the Blind. And I mention that because outreach is extremely important, not just for delivering these materials to the public, but for making sure that our end users, their input is embedded into every step of the development process. So instead of just going at the end and saying, here's what we made, actually making sure that your desired audience is part of the development process and that their input is leading the way. And so these are all images taken from an outreach event at the Maryland School for the Blind, where we shared our tactile galaxies and then ended up redesigning things based on the input from the students. Another really great organization in the world of tactile outreach is a group called C3D. This is a nonprofit led by Caroline Karbowski, a friend of mine who's also an Ohio State student. Her nonprofit works with people all around the country who request 3D models. So these are blind people of any age who want to know what something feels like. And they then design and print and distribute these requests to people all across the nation. And while their work is not specific to space science, because astronomy and aerospace are so often perceived as visual, they do receive a lot of requests for space science models, such as some of the ones shown here. So if you're interested in this work, I do encourage you to visit their website, c3d.org, or to email Caroline and her team at info@c3d.org. But what happens when you don't have a 3D printer? This is a specific type of technology that not everybody has access to. Well, if you don't have a 3D printer, this is not an issue. And that's something that was never more clear to me than when I was working in South Africa in Cape Town at the South African Astronomical Observatory. There, I was a visiting fellow, and I worked with a team of students at a blind school, and we ended up doing a tactile astronomy day for their students. And while I brought some of my 3D prints and tactile galaxies, what I'll never forget is how the Play-Doh planets that I made to scale of the solar system really is what impacted these students the most. And on my scale, I had a basketball as Jupiter, a soccer ball was Saturn, and oranges were Uranus and Neptune. So these are household materials that the students were familiar with. And each time I placed one of the small Play-Doh planets in their hand for the terrestrial planets, they literally squealed with joy, so excited to know what that felt like for the very first time, because it was the first time in their lives that this concept was explained in an accessible way. And it was the first time that this clicked. And this is really important to me because I think it speaks to the fact that accessibility is not just for bringing in marginalized audiences, but it allows a new way to learn for any user. So having a tactile way to visualize the scale of our solar system helps anyone, because this is material that is really inaccessible to the average human just in general, because it's such a large scale to imagine. And so this is really important because it drives home the point that accessibility is not just about inclusion and just about diversity. It's actually helping everyone, and it's something that everyone gets to benefit from. We decided to bring together some of the key players in science accessibility by organizing a conference called SciAccess. I hosted this event for the very first time last year at The Ohio State University, and together we brought 250 people from around the world, as well as 60 speakers to discuss their experience in the world of inclusive STEM. We featured keynotes from astronaut Anusha Ansari and renowned autism advocate and animal scientist, Dr. Temple Grandin. This year, we hosted the conference online, and SciAccess 2020 had 555 attendees from around the world come together to talk about how to continue this conversation on accessible science. This featured a keynote from Dr. Soyeon Lee, the first and only South Korean astronaut. For this year's conference, we had those 555 folks come from 46 different countries, shown here in blue. And this actually covered all 7 continents, including a special message from researchers at the South Pole discussing their work in astronomy in Antarctica. For discussing the future and the next steps of SciAccess, I'm going to turn things over to Michaela to tell you a little bit more about how you can get involved in upcoming initiatives.
Thanks, Anna. So in order to capitalize on the momentum of SciAccess 2020, we're extremely excited to announce the formation of the SciAccess Working Group. This is an international collective of professionals who are interested in promoting disability, inclusion, and diversity in the STEM fields. It is open to people in space science as well as other disciplines. If you're interested in sharing your projects, ideas, experiences, or resources with a larger public audience, or if you are looking to collaborate on science accessibility initiatives, you can join by emailing Anna at volker.30@osu.edu. For folks looking to engage more informally, we also encourage you to join the SciAccess community group on Facebook. Please see the link in the chat. Looking to the future, we are already hard at work organizing SciAccess 2021. We are working with partners from the SciAccess Working Group and Geneva Lake Astrophysics and STEAM, headed by Kate Meredith, to organize the next SciAccess conference in person in Geneva Lake, Wisconsin. We are currently looking for funding opportunities and welcome any suggestions you may have. We are also currently organizing a new mentorship program between Ohio State and the Ohio State School for the Blind to begin with the new school year. The program will pair blind and visually impaired students from across the country with undergraduate and graduate students at Ohio State studying astronomy and space science. The hallmark activity of the program will be to involve the students in Gravity Spy or another space science, citizen science project by sonifying the project's data so the students can analyze it in an accessible format. Sonification is a process that turns data into sound. Here we have one of the most well-known examples of sonified data for you to listen to, an audio clip from LIGO of two black holes colliding. Additionally, we are applying to involve the students in the NASA in-flight education downlink program to allow them to participate in a live call with astronauts on the International Space Station in November. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we are in the process of planning the second season of Making Space for All, a series of weekly virtual public lectures featuring the work of underrepresented space scientists. The first season of Making Space for All ran from April 2nd to June 25th this year, and we plan to launch the second season in September. If you're interested in being a featured scientist, please reach out to either me or Anna. So why does any of this matter? Accessible space science outreach is important because it lets people with disabilities know that they too can be astronomers and aerospace engineers. It shows them that scientists are all different kinds of people, not just the stereotype of an elderly male genius working by himself. It lets them share in the excitement and wonder of scientific discovery. In a time when scientific literacy is decreasing and there is rampant distrust of the sciences, it is important to inspire people, and especially children, of all backgrounds to be curious about the universe. We look forward to continuing this work in the fall, and we encourage you to reach out to us if you're interested in any of our outreach efforts. We have included resources and accessible space science guidance in our final slides, which are available upon request.
Thank you so much. That's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna and Michaela. I remember volunteering at the Side Access Conference last year, and it was a truly amazing experience that I think about all the time. And I highly recommend you to reach out to Anna and Michaela to become involved. And our next panelist is Chanel Richardson. Her pronouns are she, her. Chanel is the newly appointed Secretary of the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS. She will present on diversity initiatives with SEDS and where to start for increasing diversity in larger organizations.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in and listening in to our panel today. I hope that you all can see the screen all right. I am very excited. As was just mentioned, I was just appointed as the Secretary for the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS. Our organization started in the 80s and has grown both nationwide and globally since then. Right now in the US, we have about 90 chapters, the majority of which are at the collegiate level, but we do have a few chapters in high schools, and we are actively looking to expand into more colleges and high schools in the coming years. Today, I'm hoping just to give you all a little bit of insight into our current diversity statistics, and then I'll talk about some of the initiatives that we currently have in place. And finally, I want to talk to you about things that we can be doing better. And in talking to you all about things that we can be doing better, I hope that you will take the suggestions that I make and look and see how they apply to your organization. So from a recent sample of 40 of our chapters, we found that about 1,800 of the students in these chapters, out of these 1,800 students, about 31% of these students identify as students of color, and 27% of these students identify as women or being of a gender minority. But since we don't have a further breakdown of these statistics, I cannot tell you all if this is skewed in any way or along what specific lines these statistics fall under. Currently, we do have some initiatives to increase diversity. While diversity is something very important to everyone on the board, it wasn't until recently that we actually brought on a specific diversity and inclusion manager named Harper Cheyenne. Harper is just a little bit less new than me, and she started on the SEDS team in May. Currently, she's working on crafting a living list of books and educational resources for SEDS members to learn about diversity and inclusion. And she's also working on a system through which SEDS chapter members can report an allegation against their club. I think this will be particularly helpful because I know if there's discrimination within a club's leadership, it can be hard for the affected party to go back to that same leadership, report the problem, and get a positive response. Finally, she is curating a list of resources and tips for people to gauge how committed an employer is to diversity, but we'll leave out actual employer names on this list. Another current initiative that we have is getting funds for outreach, and one way these funds will be used is for conference scholarships. In the past year, the inclusion of a diversity scholarship created by SEDS for the New Space Conference allowed for our current vice president and former secretary to actually meet the national leadership of SEDS and feel inspired enough to run for those positions. We are also currently looking to create more chapters in minority serving institutions, and we're working on getting interested NSBE members to come to our national conference. To me, these initiatives all seem very promising, and I think with good follow-through, they will have a positive impact on our organization. But based on my own experiences, I know that there's a lot more that we need to begin thinking about in the near future. So basically, we have 90 chapters that constitute our body, but we are focused on diversifying as a national organization. But it seems that our current initiatives are not directly focused on how we can diversify each chapter to the best of their ability. And so every chapter will definitely have different needs and desires when it comes to catering to a more diverse audience. If we did have a breakdown of specific metrics for each chapter, we could work with each chapter to figure out what they need to focus on and help them come up with a good plan to follow through with. We can't really aim to diversify more when we don't know what our diversity numbers are. So many organizations do already have diversity statistics that are more specifically broken down than ours, but if yours doesn't, it's definitely something to consider finding out for the future. Another issue that we will not be able to fix on our own is the general diversity problem in STEM. There are not as many women, gender minorities, or people of color in STEM, and we've known this for a long time. So while we are supportive of everyone interested in aerospace from any aspect, we don't have many meaningful events and activities for students who may have a vested interest in policy, medicine, photography, journalism, business, or other areas as it pertains to space. If we could have concrete benefits, like clear connections to people from those industries that students could talk to, then there would probably be more people interested in coming to SEDS meeting and joining our organization in general. I know that we currently do have a business pitch and essay competition, but I don't know if that's comparable to doing something like a rocketry competition for a scientist or engineer. I can't guarantee that this specific initiative would bring in a more racially or socioeconomically or gender-wise diverse group of students, but even the diversity of majors and SEDS could have a significant impact on the perspectives we have in our organization. And we need to remember that it's one thing to get people in the door, but getting people to stay is sort of its own challenge. One of the most effective ways to get someone to do something is just to ask them directly. It's not always polite to put someone on the spot, but there are many people who, if asked directly to come to a club meeting, would say yes. But once we have people in the door, we need to make sure that we're offering as much as possible to them. We make it clear that through SEDS, they can get industry connections, project experience, and friends. Again, this is something that would have to be solved on a per chapter basis. I can speak from experience and say that nearly everyone I've asked to join my SEDS chapter was able to make it to at least one meeting. But for various reasons, those students didn't always come back. Outside of my own classes and SEDS meetings, I was mostly in spaces with other students of color. And so I know that even from the initial meeting, some of those students that I asked to come who were students of color already felt isolated. So I think recruiting people en masse can be a very effective tool. This could mean sending a representative to another organization whose members are of a particular identity that we want to recruit. At the collegiate level, it can also be helpful to do joint meetings with other clubs at the school. I was in NSBE, or National Society of Black Engineers, during my undergrad, and having joint meetings with our school's chapter of SHIP, or the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, was really great for building connections and making friends. And this is something that I would have liked to see happen with SEDS, but it never worked out with my own chapter. And another thing that I want to point out, and was greatly addressed in the last talk, as you may notice, I haven't even mentioned the ableism that is pervasive in so many organizations and industries. As far as I know, we don't currently have too many directed initiatives to include those with varying abilities, but we definitely should. We need to keep in mind that we can't stop along racial, socioeconomic, or gender-wise rifts, and we won't be a truly diverse and inclusive organization until we are inclusive of and specifically catering events to literally anyone who wants to join us. Overall, I think that SEDS is really focused on diversifying, but I'm not sure if we have a clear grasp on the inclusion work that needs to happen. Getting more people of various identities to join SEDS can actually be harmful if we don't focus on making everyone who joins SEDS feel included. Once we get more chapters in minority-serving institutions, we'll need to work immediately on the ways we engage with our chapters and keep up communication. From what I know so far, everyone in our organization is really keen on listening to feedback and providing support from there. But we really need to be an organization who asks for feedback so that we can actively improve and continually support our chapters. In the coming few months that I have on board, I want to make sure that we are always asking our directors to have clear intent on the meaning and importance of diversity and inclusion. Going into something and doing it just because it seems right, but not having true purpose behind it, will mean that our efforts will not be lasting or effective. And so I just want to say here at the end that if you didn't take anything else from my talk, then I want you to take this. If you look through diversity statements from organizations and institutions, all of the language seems positive. But to me, it seems that only a handful of these statements include a part that says why diversity is important here. And if you can develop that why for yourself and for each member of your organization and craft it into a statement, including the why for your organization as a whole, then I truly believe you'll have a much easier time thinking of efforts that would be beneficial and effective for diversifying your organization, no matter what your current circumstances are. So thank you so much for your time. I know I just sort of sped through that list of suggestions, but if you have any further questions, I'll be all ears a little bit later. And feel free to contact me at either of these places that I've posted here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chanel. That was such a wonderful talk, and it's so great to hear all the developments of SEDS and the mature reflection on how the organization can still change. And I really liked the emphasis on reaching out to other fields and then helping people feel included and want to stay. And that's like so important. So I look forward to seeing the group continue to grow and diversify. And so our last presenter today, before we open it up to discussion and questions, is Ricky Roy. Let me share my screen. So her pronouns are she and her. Ricky is an international student from Singapore pursuing her master's in aerospace engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology. She's a 2019 Brooke Owens Fellow, an AIAA Diversity Scholar, a Woman of Aerospace Diversity and Inclusion Chair, and founder of Singapore's first Women Leaders in Aerospace Conference. She'll present on leaning in and leading difficult conversations despite being othered. So please, take it away, Ricky.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this conversation. I'd like to begin by defining the term othered. The use of other as a verb is rooted in sociology. To other a certain culture or individual is to treat that culture as fundamentally different from another class of individuals, often by emphasizing its apartness in traits that differ from one's own. Another sense of the adjective expands on this idea of apartness: disturbingly or threateningly different, alien, exotic. Now, coincidentally, when I came to pursue my bachelor's in aerospace engineering in the United States in 2016, I first heard of the usage of the term alien in law to refer to someone like myself, a person not a citizen or national of the United States. Alien is synonymous with foreign national. And so from the get-go, the language used to sign my customs papers or sign a lease or walk down the corridors of my aerospace department with the ITAR signage reminded me of this apartness. Now, besides being proud of the country I came from, so much of my identity in the context of aerospace was associated with being from Singapore and Southeast Asia. It was the very reason I was pursuing my degree, because of the Malaysian Airlines disappearance in 2014. There was no me in the context of studying aerospace without my background. And in preserving my background, I assumed the identity of a timid foreign national, tiptoeing around, being afraid to take up space. From freshman year career fairs all the way to senior design, where I could no longer work as the cost lead from my project because the best cost model was ITAR restricted. Being so far away from home, I was adamant on holding on to this part of myself. And in being othered came a sense of grit in needing to be accepted as I was, being recognized as a foreign national and still thriving in aerospace in the United States. What that looked like when applying to the Brooke Owens Fellowship was creating a Singapore passport flip book to share my story. And when I received the fellowship, it looked like hosting Singapore's first Women Leaders in Aerospace conference, where our Brookie space mom, Lori Garber, like NASA commercial crew queen, Lori Garber, spoke as the keynote. After being recognized as an exceptional undergraduate in aerospace by the Brooke Owens Fellowship Committee, it was not enough for me to simply enjoy this insanely large network and job myself. I felt compelled to inspire another generation of women through mentorship and conversations about women in leadership. This cause felt so important to me that I single-handedly organized an 87-person event across continents. I mobilized presidents of lofty tech organizations and principals from reputable high schools. I handled and brainstormed everything from sponsorship, marketing, speakers, gift bags, notebooks, materials, transitions, etc. And I organized this while taking systems dynamics, vehicle performance, aerodynamics, health, and an electrical engineering course. Why did I do it? To quote Michelle Obama from her new podcast, "My values as Michelle Obama is that it is not enough that I succeed on my own. If something good happens to you, you do not hoard it. You share it. You give back." And so here I was thinking, I'd done my part. I'd shared my resources. I was good. I was planning on taking my event to England next with a friend there, and then Kenya with another friend there. I'd even been awarded the AIAA Diversity Scholarship for it, and spoken next to two wonderful female engineers and the deputy director of JPL at the International Astronautical Congress. When, on May 25th, George Floyd was murdered. I had just graduated a mere 23 days ago. I was aggressively looking for jobs to hold down my visa and survive. I was alone, and my family was far away. And it was the first I learned of anti-racism. Why was this the first time I'd heard of it? Well, my upbringing and schooling led me to think of diversity through a color blindness approach. And I want to credit Celeste Ng, the author of Little Fires Everywhere, for helping me articulate this. The approach was that if you were sensitive to race and saw it, the way you would say it is, "I don't see race. Everybody is the same in my eyes." What you meant is, "I will treat people equally." But what it sounds like now is, "I will forget a very large part of your identity and experience." Now we hear that in a very different light. If you wanted to talk about race before, it was, race doesn't matter. Race as a concept can only be negative, divisive. Now we know that we can't take race out of the equation with everything else remaining the same. It just doesn't work that way. So here I am on this Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics call for their new diversity and inclusion group, and we're all talking about the next steps. How do we become truly more inclusive and not just say D&I? A lot of what Christian covered in her first presentation. And here I am tiptoeing again, othering myself. The thoughts racing in my head are, well, I'm not American, I'm not Black, I'm nervous, it's not a part of my identity. Is this really a place for me to take up space? Maybe I'll support whoever works on this, help from the sidelines. help from the sidelines. When the thought of waiting on the sidelines struck me, it's like I had this breakthrough moment thinking, wow, I've really been doing this the past 4 years. I've been wanting to be a part of the action, and because of who I am, I've had to sit on the sidelines. But what if for the first time I didn't have to? And so by the end of the call, I was the new WOA D&I co-chair. And by July 11th, we had hosted an event on microaggressions and anti-racism featuring General Bolden and Black women in aerospace from undergrad HBCUs, non-HBCUs, graduate, and young professional levels. I had gotten out of my own way. Now I bring this up because this nervousness was echoed by a lot of my peers in my year, in my fellowship and scholarship. And I know that a lot of Americans have felt this way, out of place, unsure. And as an international student, that feeling is amplified. But at the end of the day, in my gut, I knew it felt necessary. We're in the business of something that is quite literally bigger than ourselves. This gives us perspective. This is all to say that it doesn't matter where you are or where you come from, literally. You really owe it to yourself to understand what is holding you back and why in doing the diversity and inclusion work. It is all our responsibilities. And if it is my responsibility, this girl from Singapore, it is yours. You can do something if you're in the inner circle or the outer circle. If I could do all of this from the edges, peeking in, you can definitely do it if you're right in the middle of the action, in the center of it all. And I urge you to recognize the power that you have. It has really taught me how to take something and run with it. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me on all of these platforms. And please check out our Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics work on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ricky. Your work is truly inspiring, and it was amazing to hear about your journey and all the accomplishments you've been able to achieve despite being othered. It can be really difficult to find your voice as a student and as a growing adult when you're trying to evaluate what your values and goals are. And it's great to see how you have been able to do this. And we have 17 minutes left, so we would like to open the floor to an all-aerospace community discussion. We know that diversity and inclusion in our industry needs work, and so we're happy you're here because you are all a part of the path forward. We want to hear about our panelists' work, your own work, and to talk more about what we can do as an industry for diversity and inclusion in the field. We are here for you as a safe space to talk about and listen to how you have experienced the aerospace industry and your experiences with diversity and inclusion. And so yeah, please raise your hands if you want to speak or type your questions in the chat. Therese, Karen, and Luke can help go through the questions.
Yeah, so this is Luke Riesbeck here, and I just wanted to point out a couple of comments that we've already had just as we're waiting for a few questions to roll in from the chat here. We had a fantastic comment from a commenter named Julia in the chat. She mentioned, when working towards a more inclusive environment within the aerospace industry and elsewhere, it is of utmost importance to provide transcripts and subtitles for your podcasts, webinars, videos, etc. Auto-generated captions are the most beneficial when pre-recording your content online, as long as you intend to edit the typos out. When planning and coordinating events, be sure to budget in accommodations like ASL interpreters and real-time captioning. The narrative that, quote, space is for all, unquote, should also include the deaf community. And I just wanted to highlight that comment as an absolutely great point and something that we totally agree with here as well. So that's one comment I wanted to highlight. And I think by now we have a couple of raised hands. So maybe we can address these in the order that they've been raised. Let me see if I can see the order here. I don't know if I can. So I will just look at the ones that I see raised, and maybe we can start with Chelsea Cook. Your hand is raised. So if you like, if you prefer to type, that would be great. But if you prefer not to type, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. It's really cool to be here because I found out about this conference from Anna very last minute. I did have a sort of quick accessibility comment, and then I guess I might have another question. The quick accessibility comment is for Ricky. I'm super interested now that I know that the women in aerospace and astronautics exist, but when you put up your contact info slide, did you have an email address? And if so, could you give that to me?
Hi, absolutely. I will message that to you right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I wasn't able to look at the slide and see your email. And then I guess the other broad question that I'll throw out to the floor is just if there's any sort of considerations for like the job hunt and the job descriptions, because I did notice, can't remember who said it, but the one who said, all the EEO policies are super great, but it's just a matter of if companies will do it and will stand by that commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's definitely organizations should be examining those really closely and only commit to things that they are intending on following through on. So that's a really great point to raise. And thank you. I appreciate your questions. I'm going to move to another question in the chat here from commenter Ishmita Deb. I hope I pronounced that right. Apologies if I didn't. The question is, what are the opportunities in the policy sector in the space arena? Please go ahead and give me some outlines as well, any information you have. So is there anybody on the panel who would like to take that question? All right, so I can go ahead and try to answer that question. I currently work in space policy at Astroscale US, and I think for students, it's a bit of a, it's a relatively smaller part of the space industry, but I would go ahead and just defer to what Chanel presented in her presentation about many organizations that are focused on young professional career building and student outreach are inclusive and hoping to open themselves up beyond just what we tend to think of as quote unquote traditional space majors like engineering. So I think there's a lot of progress being made on that point, and a lot of policy opportunities that are making themselves known. But again, as always with any of these topics, feel free to reach out to the organizers of this panel. And if we know of any specific opportunities, we'd be happy to pass them along to you. All right.
Yeah,
I was just going to jump in. Please do.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I saw Adrian had a really great comment that there is a UNOSA program, like mentoring program for women called Space with the number 4 women at unosa.org in the chat. And then also like someone sent out to check out the website spacegeneration.org. That's the Space Generation Advisory Council. And they also have opportunities to get involved with the young professional groups in space policy. So that might be really cool to check out as well. And then, yeah. And then I want to also go up to Adrian's next comment or next question about She says, thank you for all your inspiring presentations. And for all the panelists, how do you cope with obstacles in keeping momentum on your projects?
I can jump in on that one, Caroline.
Yeah.
For me, sometimes you feel like you want to give up, especially when things aren't necessarily moving very quickly. But the one thing that keeps me grounded is just understanding that these projects and different initiatives are really making a difference in the next generation. And that's going to be the folks that are going to be getting us, to Mars, that's going to continue to allow for more space exploration. And so that's what really keeps me going, to really have that space for all mentality.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Oh, go ahead.
All right, I was just going to jump in.
Please.
This is Anna speaking, and I thought there were some really great questions in the chat here. I wanted to respond to one question from Stelly, who asks, is there any professional organizations we'd like to cite as being particularly supportive of inclusion? You've probably all heard, quite a few of us are part of this thing called the Brooke Owens Fellowship. And this is specifically for undergraduates from gender minority groups. So women and non-binary people, anyone from an underrepresented gender in space science. And I would highly recommend sharing this as a great resource for folks. And on a similar topic, we also had another great question about someone who is starting a professional program for people in Israel, for women in Israel. So I just wanted to highlight their comment because I think that's wonderful. And they ask if we have any recommendations for the platform that is best for when trying to provide mentoring and opportunities for networking. So just to respond to that, in terms of platforms for professional groups, the one I run, SciAccess, the SciAccess working group, currently what we do is we host everything behind the scenes in a Slack channel, SLACK, and that's sort of for the connection part. And then we do weekly meetings on Zoom with everyone to get everyone connected. And then we have an outward facing website for folks to learn about it. So that's sort of what works for us. And just in response to that, I did also want to share international opportunities that we've been compiling for students who are interested in space science who are not US citizens. So I just dropped that in the chat, and that's for anyone who might know international students, non-US students who want to get involved in space internships. And this has opportunities in the United States as well as other countries, because as I'm sure the other panelists can speak to, there are a limited number of opportunities when it comes to being a non-US citizen looking for these internships. So I just wanted to highlight those points and to throw it to anyone else in the panel who has additional insight to share on those questions. Stelly, yes, please feel free to share that document with whomever. It is open to the public. Thank you.
I just wanted to weigh in on a few of these questions here. The first, how do you keep momentum going with these projects? I think that for all of us, we probably have personal experience feeling isolated or out of place within things that we've done in the aerospace community. So it's keeping that in mind and thinking that I personally don't want anyone else to feel that. The last thing I want people to be thinking about as they are thinking about joining an industry they're passionate about is feeling othered or out of place. And so just knowing that, any work that I do now to increase diversity and, foster inclusion can be really helpful for someone else is just kind of enough to keep me going. In terms of organizations, not being necessarily as aerospace specific, there are a lot of identity-based organizations, and a lot of these organizations have specific subchapters that are focused on the aerospace industry. And so that could definitely be worth looking into. I know for sure that NSBE or the National Society of Black Engineers does. I can't speak to other organizations, but other ones to look into would be SHIP or SWE, I would just look up any sort of identity that you're trying to specifically join an organization for, and then see if they have some specific aerospace resources.
I'm going to actually jump down to, because I really liked Carlos's question, which is, looking at the audience names, the audience does not seem to be the most diverse pool. This is in no way a criticism of the organizers, but how do you think we can expand the audiences to have broader buy-in and participation from diversity and inclusion efforts? Does anyone in the panel have any thoughts? Otherwise, anyone in the audience too. Maybe one of the, at least from my experience, maybe one of the number one things is to continue having these conversations. And that's something that that I'd really like for discussions like these to continue into the future. So that way there's no way that no one is talking about them.
Absolutely. I think I'm very happy that we were able to get the audience associated with a SmallSat side discussion. I think that in my own opinion, all major space conferences and really any type of science and technology related, academic and industry conferences should consider having diversity and inclusion tracks for their meetings and for their wider conferences that they have. I think that would help elevate these conversations to the status that they deserve. They are essential to the success of these organizations and fields of study. So that would be, if I could change one thing about the world, I would definitely try to elevate these conversations a little more. But Caroline mentioned earlier, the interest is certainly there. I think at one point reached almost 90 participants in this session alone. So I really encourage you all to spread the word when these kinds of events are come across your social media or come across your inbox to others, whether that be within your individual companies, your academic programs, your professors, to make sure that these get the widest participation possible.
Hey, this is Jillian Pierce with Space Florida. I thought that was a really excellent question, and I just wanted to note that internally, at least with my organization, anytime I've participated in a discussion about diversity, inclusion, or anything like that, that I know that I'm probably likely the only person in my organization who has time to participate in one of those tracks. I've taken some notes and sent those out to the rest of the team to make sure that that message is further amplified. So yes, there might have been 90 people, which is great, but even if we each tell one other person in our organization, that doubles the spread of that. Because I think one of the things that becomes challenging is when there are so many tracks at the same time, even today, digitally, there are things that, kind of fall through the cracks. And so making sure that you take notes and pass on those lessons learned can really be helpful as well.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And for those of you following along in the chat right now, I just wanted to, again, we'll close our session here soon, but I wanted to read out a few more resources that are being dropped in the chat in addition to this great discussion we have going. There seems to be there's a comment from Anna about the fact that NASA's education site has a lot of fantastic resources for students. Anna recommends that there are engineering design challenges, which are hands-on activities for kids getting involved in STEM. Yeah, there are a few other resources in the chat, reaching out to media like Space News and Space Policy Online, and a few more that are being dropped in the chat here. So I recommend that you all, again, wanted to highlight the things happening there. So,
and just to jump in, like you can actually, I think you can save the chat too, so that way you have it for your record. But we will also be passing around the recording, and unfortunately, sadly, we are coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and so therefore we're at the end of our session, and so this conversation is just getting started though, so I'm I'm really excited for all of your enthusiasm and to thank you all for coming. And I'm just going to share my screen one more time that we will have a scheduled event at AIAA Ascend in November. But then definitely stay tuned in the meantime for more events to continue the conversation. I know that our event was shared mostly on social media from our moderators and our diversity task group and our speakers. And so if you can follow them, then we'll definitely get the word out again for the next event. And if I can figure out Eventbrite, I will also share it there too as an email. So please, thank you all for coming, and thank you to our speakers for sharing their time, and to our diversity task group for being all hands-on, like making sure that this event runs smoothly. Thank you to Amy for being my co-moderator, and to our interpreter and our live captioner for all their work to make this event as accessible as possible. Does Amy, do you have any concluding remarks too?
Yeah, just thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. It's something that can be very difficult to talk about with other people, especially when you don't have people close to you who look like you, who understand what you're experiencing. So yeah, thank you again for coming. We are always here for you, and if you ever want to talk to any of the moderators, the panelists, anyone that's been involved in this conference, feel free to reach out to us on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and just ask about anything you want. And if you need advice on applying to fellowships or finding resources to get more involved in the aerospace industry, yeah, we're just a question away.
All right, thank you so much. And this concludes the end of our session. And thank you for coming. I put my info in the chat as well, so I know that some people have been reaching out asking for info. Amy has also put her info in the chat.